it was like we were constantly treading water. It's like we were on this tiny little boat and fell down into a deep depression. So for me, I thought I had some superpower, and God had to so very quickly teach me that. Hi, welcome. My name is Yorros, and I talk about encouraging things, inspirational things, all centered around faith in God, encouraging all of you, because that is what we are here for. How have you guys been doing? I am so stinking excited that it is fall. I'm gonna tell you a little bit why I'm so excited for this holiday season, but welcome. Today's topic is going to be about mental health. So I'm going to start off with a couple disclaimers. First of all, I am not a mental health professional, and I am a registered nurse, but I am not here in my capacity as a registered nurse, just as a fellow human telling my story, hoping to encourage you and uplift you. Also, if I am wearing the same outfit from last video, that is totally okay. Just ignore that. I am repping breast cancer awareness. I am wearing my pink because it is October. Today we're talking about mental health. Again, this is not medical advice, but it is my story, and I hope that it helps some of you out there feel like you are not alone. So if you don't know my story, I always give you guys a little bit of synopsis, summary of my story, because it's a big part of why I have this YouTube channel, is because I want to encourage people. It's so easy when we're going through crisis and hard times. Let me tell you, the devil will like hit us with so many darts in our minds that we forget what is real, and we start believing all this lies, and man, we spiral. I know, because I have been there. I want to share my story. This is going to be a little bit of a story time, and then I'm going to share some encouraging things that have helped me in my struggle and my mental health, what I'm doing, what is helping, all of the things. Please leave me comments down below if you have experienced similar things to what I have experienced, because I think people need to see that there is a community out there. There are people out there that have gone through very similar things. If you don't know my story, in 2021, my husband Daniel went into multi-organ failure as a result of this. And it was a crazy start to multi-organ failure. He went into multi-organ failure, and his kidney shut down, and he acquired a bunch of chronic illnesses, walked through 2.5 years of really scary stuff. He lost his ability to walk for a little bit because he got so weak and so sick. He had to use a scooter as a 25-year-old man, and that was very hard on him mentally, as well as for me. We had just gotten married 1.5 years before he got sick, so we had barely started our marriage, and he got chronically ill, and I became a caregiver for him, which was a very big strain on me. I like to speak about that candidly, because I think people sometimes see us as caregivers. So if you're a caregiver, I see you, boo. Because sometimes people see us as caregivers, and they're like, wow, they're like they see us as Mother Teresa, right? Like as angels. It wasn't really an option for me. Like, I love that man. Like, what else would you do? I don't know. Now we struggle, bro. We struggle. That kind of switcheroo of me being this like super independent person. I'm a nurse, by the way, and so that too, like I was so used to caring for other people, but like that would stay in the hospital, and I would come home and like get a break from it. But when it's your own loved one that now you transition to being their caregiver, yo, that hits different. It's hard. It's really hard. That whole switch from just living a normal life to like I'm his caregiver, and like you as a caregiver, though you're independent in terms of like mobility and being able to do things for yourself, because obviously you're doing them for someone else too, but you lose your independence in terms of like your life becomes so tethered to this person in a way that you never expected, and that is a very big hit to your mental health and to your mind. I mean, it's rough. For me, it became very depressing because Daniel's health would get better for a season, and then it got worse until he received his kidney transplant, and we went through some really scary hits one after another. Like he would be fine for a week, and then all of a sudden they would find he had an infection, and then after the infection cleared, all of a sudden his dialysis wasn't working adequately, and he needed a medical procedure, and then he needed surgery, and it was literally like for a while there. I'm talking like a year, about a year and a half stretch of time where we got no breathing room. Like it was like we were constantly treading water. It's like we were on this tiny little boat in the middle of this huge tempest, and water would continually pour into our little boat, and we're sinking, and we would try to bucket the water out, but it kept coming in. I mean, we were drowning. I mean, it got to a point where I was literally surviving. I gained 20 pounds in like this whole 2.5 years 2.5 year-ish span of my husband's, the worst of his condition. Of course, his conditions are going to be for life. Like, he lost his eyesight in one eye, and then he also lost his kidney function. So a kidney transplant is not meant to last for forever. They usually last on average 6 to 12 years. So it's possible we will have to go again through the kidney transplant process. And of course, you know, there's no controlling how long a kidney will be good for. All we can do is take care of it as much as possible. And so we went through such a bad stretch that, like, just the inability to get a break, to the point that I was going pretty insane. And I don't say that lightly, or I don't say that dramatically either. Like, I fell down into a deep depression, something the enemy has always tried to attack me with, and a lot of anxiety, a lot of self-hatred that came along with that, which is pretty funny because you would think, like, as a caregiver, you feel proud of, like, the care you're providing, which of course I did. I was proud of being able to care for my loved one, but there comes a moment where you're like pouring so much into another person that you let yourself go. And that is like the perfect scenario, I think, for depression to settle in. I struggled with, and again, I don't say this lightly, and I'm also not offering advice on how to handle these things, but if you are going through this, please reach out to someone. Know that you are special. Know that you are loved and wanted, even if you don't feel like it. Trust me, when you're in the worst, in the thick of it, you don't feel loved and wanted, and that's a rough place to be. Like, people can show you love and you just don't, like, you can't perceive it, you can't receive it. It's a really dark place that we go sometimes when we're under such constant stress and trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma. You know, the way I can describe the crisis that we went through is like, you're always afraid that something like this can happen to your family, but when it actually comes true, it brings such a level of instability, because it's almost like, oh, the boogeyman's not real, and then something happens to you and you're like, but wait. I don't know how else to describe that. It's just when the worst case scenario happens to you, you stop expecting good things to happen. Especially when you've known nothing but bad after bad after bad. You no longer think good can even happen. I had never been through, we've all been through stuff in our lives, but I had never been through something this horrifying. A wonderful part of my story is that I am a Christian minister. I am a minister with the Assemblies of God. I felt like I should have had like a bigger capacity than quote unquote people that were ministers. Like, I should have been able to handle all of this because I have so much faith and because I am a servant of God and blah, 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 blah. Please. I quickly learned that I was just as human as anybody else. God hadn't given me some special superpower. Like, I was still human. And being a minister is nothing more than being a servant to people and a servant of God. It doesn't grant us some like extra status or something. For me, it doesn't. I don't see it that way. It's about serving people. And so for me, I thought I had some superpower, and God had to so very quickly teach me that I needed Him and needed to depend on Him just as much as anybody else, if not more. If not more. And a lot of my husband's condition, and through the worst of it, I found myself trying to do everything in my own strength. And the Bible very clearly tells us that is not a good idea. That we should do it by the Spirit of God, that we need His help. Like, we need His help. I am the type of person that my personality, like, I don't like admitting I need help. And if you're like that, I see you, I get it. I have always been very uber independent. Like, I don't like asking for help. If there's something heavy and I'm in a room full of people, I'm gonna go lift it by myself. I'm not gonna ask for help. If you wanna help me and lift it, cool, but like, I'm gonna go do it myself. I don't like asking for help. It doesn't come naturally to me, but that's not always a healthy thing when we're going through hard times. Not sometimes, like, we do need help. We need God's people. We need to let people in. And that's a lesson I'm still learning. Like, I don't have that down perfectly by any means. I'm learning every single day, and it's hard. That's a very humbling thing, to have to allow people into your mess. Of course, not everyone is invited into your mess, because let's be honest, not everyone should come into your mess, because some people are a mess themselves. But there are people that God will send to be just helpers in our lives. And yeah, I know there's a group of us that doesn't come naturally to, so you're not alone. I just want to encourage you, like, you can trust God. He will bring you people and He will help you in the worst of it. And so in my mental health journey, I ended up in a point of surrender, where I had to learn to start surrendering things to the Lord. Now, I know that there's times where we're in survival mode, but in the long run, God has created us to thrive. God has created us for freedom and for joy. And we can experience that in the middle of the worst of the storm. Jesus exemplifies that when he walks on water, right? His disciples were sent out in a boat and a huge storm came. Jesus had stayed behind where they had been ministering, but the disciples got in a boat and went ahead, and all of a sudden this huge swell, this huge storm rose up, and the disciples were freaking out. And all of a sudden they look out into the water and there's a man walking on the water, and they're like, is that a ghost? And Jesus is like, nah, it's me. And so yeah, he exemplifies to us that he is with us in the middle of the storm. And it says that Peter said, well, if you're Jesus, then call me to get out of this boat and walk over to you on the water just like you're doing. And Jesus calls him to walk on the water, but Peter got distracted with the storm and he got scared, and so he began to sink, and Jesus had to grab him out of the water. We all, I think, have been in situations like that where like Jesus needs to grab us out of the water. There's no shame in that, because I think we all get so ashamed when we're drowning, but I want you to know there is someone walking on water with you in the middle of the storm. And sometimes what we need to do is surrender all these expectations, surrender ourselves, and stop trying to fight so much against the waves. Just start walking on them with Jesus. Like, we will need Jesus for that, okay? We will need Jesus for that. But there are times when we're just treading water and he is reaching his hand out to us. And so if you are walking through a really, difficult mental health struggle because of crisis in your life, I just want you to know you are not alone. You are not alone. There's a lot of people walking through that. And if you're a minister, because the reality is like ministers are like so expected to be so perfect and strong. But the reality is, like, you're allowed to break just like anybody else. Like, you are allowed to break, and Jesus will be there to put your pieces back together. You'll be stronger than before. But we need to stop as ministers pretending like we have it all together, because then people start thinking that we have to be that way, that everyone has to be that way as well. God doesn't call us to pretend that we're okay. He calls us to be humble before him and ask for the help that we need. And I am so grateful that I have learned that lesson. And so I wanted to share that with you today. God is with you, and he will hold you through the worst storms. I make multiple videos like this every single month. In fact, I am posting a video every single Thursday to encourage and inspire you in your walk with God, because that's what we're here for. God bless you, and I will see you in the next one.